So you're diabetic. If you go the traditional route, you have a 1 in 400 chance of reversing or what's called putting your diabetes into remission. This is from a study done by Kaiser Permanente that said that 0.23% of people in a traditional model can reverse their diabetes. And the reason is because the traditional model of care, typically you get blood work done. And what does your doctor give you? Metformin for most of you, maybe 500 milligrams once or twice a day, maybe 1,000 milligrams once or twice a day. And then they give you this great advice, change your diet, lose weight, and exercise. And typically during the first couple months of this, your actually blood sugar numbers do start to come down. But eventually you go in for a follow-up and the doc says, hey, the numbers are starting to creep up. I think we need to make a change. And what does a change mean in a traditional model? Well, it means you're going to now be on the max dose of metformin, which is 2,000 milligrams a day. And then you're in what I call the drop-down arrow of diabetes care. So you start with metformin, and then maybe you go to Glipizide, Actos, Januvia, Farxiga, Jardiance, Rybelsus. And then eventually all roads lead to what? All roads lead to insulin. And that's the story. And unfortunately, diabetes we know is a chronic degenerative disease. What does that mean in English? It means it's going to get worse as you move forward. And those medications aren't meant to reverse your condition. They're just meant to slow down the degenerative process. And what you need to understand is, we follow the ABCs formula. So A means we have to get an accurate assessment. In other words, not just is your A1C high, is your blood sugar high, your blood pressure high, your cholesterol high, but why is your blood sugar high? Why is your A1C high? Why is your blood pressure high? Why is your cholesterol high? And so, we need to get an accurate assessment. And then the B for the ABCs formula is you must understand that your blood sugar is not the cause of your diabetes. It is the result. It is the symptom. The same thing with the A1C. They are the symptoms of your problem. And unfortunately, you should know this by now in your life, but if you just treat the symptoms of the problem, is the problem going to get worse or is the problem going to get better? Well, the problem's going to get worse. And these medications are only known to try to lower the symptoms. The C part of the ABCs formula is once we get an accurate assessment, the first C is comprehensive diagnosis, not just is your A1C high, is your blood pressure high, is your blood sugar high, is your cholesterol high, but, do you have fatty liver? Do you have leaky gut? Do you have toxins? Do you have food intolerances? Do you have inflammatory markers? Do you have thyroid issues? Do you have autoimmune issues? These adrenal fatigue. These are all things that cause you an inability to regulate your blood sugar. And then that leads us to the second C, which is a customized treatment program specifically for you. Okay. And then that is the only way to get a much better percentage of 1 in 400. So, there's a lot of things you don't know about diabetes. I mean, a lot of you, if I asked you what your A1C is, you're going to tell me it's a 90-day average of your sugar. But what it really is a 90-day average of how much sugar is attached to your red blood cell. Well, the reason it's 90 days is guess how long your red blood cells are supposed to live? 90 days. And so if your red blood cells are not living 90 days, well, then that number on your paper is not accurate. And then being diabetic, all of you are insulin resistant. And I want to try to quickly explain this to you because I know you've heard the term. So just very quickly, when we eat, our glucose goes into our bloodstream, right? It goes into our bloodstream. It's supposed to do that. And if you measured your glucose at that point, it would be high. And this is why the body, when it's working properly, the pancreas will send insulin, and insulin's like the Uber driver, right? And the glucose is like the passenger. So the insulin Uber driver picks up the passenger glucose and takes it out of the bloodstream, right? But then where does the passenger want to go? Well, the glucose passenger wants to go into the cell. So think of my hands as a cell. And it needs to get into the cell to make something called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Just think energy, right? But what happens is the cell you're blocked. That insulin glucose molecule cannot get into the cell. It's resistant to the insulin. And so then what happens? That molecule is going to back up into the bloodstream. So then when you prick your finger and you take your blood sugar, is it going to be higher or lower? Well, it's going to be higher. It also describes to us why a lot of you are on what we call the diabetic cocktail. With the diabetic cocktail. What's the diabetic cocktail? Blood sugar, blood pressure, and a statin. So what's interesting, and so when that blood sugar molecule can't get in because of the insulin resistance, it goes back up into the bloodstream. So you take your blood sugar and it's higher, blood sugar medication. Now, if you have a bunch of gunk in your bloodstream, is it going to take more pressure or less pressure to push the liquid through? More pressure, high blood pressure. And then that molecule, if it stays in there long enough, is going to turn into this sticky material that blocks the blood vessels known as triglycerides. So that's why you're on the prescribed the diabetic cocktail, blood sugar, blood pressure, and a statin. But what's interesting is 50% of you, at least my experience is 50% of you are on this blood pressure medication and you don't have high blood pressure. And another 50% of you are on a statin and you don't have high cholesterol. Now, I'm not telling anyone or giving anyone permission to stop or reduce taking any of their medications at this point. But my question is, you might want to ask your doctor, like, why am I on a blood pressure medication and I don't have high blood pressure? And why am I on a statin if I don't have high cholesterol? And the answer I'm told when my patients ask is the doctors say, eventually you're going to get it. You might as well start now. So I agree with half of that. Eventually you are going to get it. But I don't agree that you should be taking, or someone should be taking a medication that they don't have the problem. That just really doesn't pass the common sense test. You know, you guys will tell me because you need to lose weight, because of your age, and because of genetic. Those are three myths. None of those are true. And then also there's multiple types of diabetes. So don't you think it would be proper to find out exactly which type you have? So there's type 1, which is not reversible because your pancreas is not working and you can't secrete insulin. So you can't reverse that condition. Then there's type 2, which you may be. Then there's type 3, which is, write this down, also known as Alzheimer's, AKA Alzheimer's, also known as Alzheimer's. And then there's type 1.5. And briefly, type 1.5 means you have an autoimmune disease. Whether you know it or not, doesn't matter. You can still have a disease you don't know about. And that problem is causing you an inability to regulate your blood sugar. And if you're being treated as a type 2 diabetic, but you're actually a type 1.5 diabetic, I didn't mean to give you the finger, type 1.5 diabetic, you're the type of patient the doctor's like, I don't really know what to tell you. So my point of this video is this. If you want to have a conversation and figure out what else you don't know and what else you haven't been told, and you really want to reverse your condition, click the button and you can set up a strategy session with me and we can ask each other questions. I mean, I know obviously everything I've gone over so far is not specific to your case. I mean, some of it might be and some of it might sound familiar, but you need and want to tell me things specific to you. And the only way I'm going to figure out your next step is to hear those specificities, right? Then also, you also have the opportunity in a strategy session, you can also order a toxicity test. Why is that important? Because toxins are the thing that block the entryway to the cell. So we might as well start now. Now, if you do the strategy session for 97, we're going to put that 97 towards any diagnostics. And we've already taken care of the toxicity test. If you want to do that now, we've already taken 97 off. So really the strategy session at that point, if you move forward with the diagnostics, is at no charge to you. And I'm just doing this to get in touch with more people because, you know, a lot of people don't like to register for a webinar and then wait a week and then they forget. And they're like, just get to the point. Well, you know, I've gotten enough to the point where hopefully if you're interested, and you don't have to be, but if it's something you want to, you know, move forward and kind of discuss in a little bit more specificity to your case, I'm here to do that. Click the button, you'll be able to schedule, and we'll go from there. I hope to see some of you. God bless, and I wish you nothing but good luck. Thanks. Bye-bye.